Bandidos leaders were arrested yesterday, two of them right here in San Antonio. Today, we're looking closer into documents the U.S. Attorney's Office sent us regarding that case. Courtney Friedman is digging into the details and even paid a visit to one of the Bandidos members mentioned in the indictment.
You have heard a lot about Bandidos and their criminal records from us. You may think there's none that can ever cross the Bandidos or face them. But that's where you are wrong, because the Hells Angels has been their enemy since a really long time. The Bandidos and Hells Angels have long been known as two of the largest and most notorious motorcycle clubs on earth. It's no surprise, then, that they've also spent decades dutifully maintaining a legendary and incredibly violent feud. During the 90s, the Bandidos and Hells Angels found themselves vying for control of various territories in the US as they sought to expand their respective drugs and arms trafficking businesses. Drive-bys and shootings became commonplace between the two gangs. In March of 1996, members of both gangs were booked on the same flights home from a biker conference in Europe. When the Bandidos arrived at Copenhagen Airport, the Hells Angels were ready and waiting to ambush them. Half a dozen Hells Angels opened fire on the Bandidos in the parking lot, killing one and injuring three. This sparked an all-out war between the two motorcycle clubs. A few months later, the Bandidos planned to take their revenge at a Hells Angels clubhouse party attended by more than 150 members and non-members. There was nothing especially subtle about their retaliation. The Bandidos launched a rocket-propelled grenade into the clubhouse, killing 2 people and injuring 19 more. Eventually, things became so intense that leaders of both gangs called a truce as they realized the violence was not good for business. However, this didn't sit well with Jeffrey Pike, a member of the Bandidos rising rapidly through the ranks. Pike eventually became Bandidos president in 2006. Along the way, a lot of people got hurt. Resentment between the two organizations continued to grow when bikers rejected by the Hells Angels joined the Bandidos instead. At various points, the two gangs stole drug shipments from each other. As you can imagine, this did little to engender peace. Today, both of these infamous outlaw motorcycle clubs are considered a national threat. The Hells Angels are still the largest motorcycle club in the world, with Bandidos right behind them. After a troubled and bloody past, the two rival gangs seem perfectly set up to enjoy a violent and murderous future together. The Nordic outlaw biker culture emerged in Sweden with the establishment of numerous motorcycle clubs, MTs, in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Motorcycle groups inspired by the British rocker subculture then began in Denmark in the 1970s. Beginning around 1980, Danish clubs became increasingly influenced by developments in the United States and began to refer to themselves as bikers, the American term for motorcycle enthusiasts. The term rocker is still commonly used by the police and media in Denmark to refer to the outlaw motorcycle subculture. Denmark in particular has the highest number of outlaw bikers in Europe and perhaps even in the world. Commander Troels Orting Jorgensen of the Danish police told the Canadian journalists Julian Scheer and William Marsden in a 2006 interview, "No one has ever done a sociological investigation as to why in this small, extremely peaceful country of Denmark, we have so many chapters of outlaw motorcycle gangs. They are very much hardliners, they are fierce, they are violent. We are the country of Hans Christian Andersen. We should not create crooks like that." As the biker milieu expanded in Sweden and Denmark, violent conflicts arose between motorcycle clubs and the authorities began to take an interest in the clubs while gang wars proliferated. Outlaw motorcycle clubs then began to appear in Finland in the late 1980s, during which time there was little distinction between club-affiliated bikers and independent recreational motorcyclists. Motorcycle gang violence did not occur in the country until the early 1990s. Intergang violence escalated in the Nordic countries as motorcycle clubs became increasingly more involved in organized crime during the 1980s and 1990s, resulting in the arrival of larger international clubs. Biker gangs in the region previously consisted of locally bounded single chapters which later merged, patched over, into the Hells Angels, HMC, and the Bandidos as they sought protection in more powerful clubs. The Hells Angels arrived in 1980 and gradually established dominance over the Scandinavian biker scene, before smaller clubs banded together and began forming Bandidos chapters in 1993 in order to resist forced amalgamation by the Hamks. The first Hells Angels chapter in Scandinavia was founded in Denmark on 30 December 1980 when Union and MC from Copenhagen, a union of 4 local clubs dating from 1977, was patched over. Bullshit Motorcycle Club, a merger of 2 clubs opposed to the Hamks' dominance, settled in Copenhagen's Christiania and took control of the hashish trade in the area. Bullshit and the Hells Angels engaged in a conflict that came to be known as the First Biker War or Copenhagen Biker War between September 1983 and December 1985, resulting in the murder of 8 Bullshit members, including 3 presidents, 1 Hells Angels member, and 2 innocent people. In addition, Bullshit MC members were also prime suspects for the murder of 2 non-bikers during the war. When the police visited the former clubhouse of Bullshit in 1986, they also found the corpse of a man beneath the clubhouse door. The first war was limited to Copenhagen alone, unlike the second, and the number of deaths during the Copenhagen War met or exceeded the number of deaths in the following war. Unlike the second war, the first had a clear winner and no peace treaty was required. Bullshit's members were younger and less organized than those in the Hells Angels, and they disbanded in 1988. Shortly after, the Morbid's MC in Helsingborg became a probationary Bandidos chapter on 22 January 1994. Members of the Hells Angels Prospect Club Rebels MC strafed the club's headquarters with gunfire. The Rebels later became a Hamp chapter in Haslab, based out of a rural compound less than 2 miles away from the Morbid's dairy farm-turned clubhouse in Helsingborg. The clubhouse was targeted again the following week when on 26 January 1994, Malmö Hells Angels chapter president Thomas Moller fired a high-caliber submachine gun from the roof of a van, resulting in a Morbid's member losing a finger. On 13 February 1994, 15 Danish Bandidos members were ambushed by Hells Angels associates at a Helsingborg nightclub, resulting in 13 gunshots being fired and Joachim Bowman, a member of the Hells Angels support club Rednecks MC, being shot dead. 3 others, including Hells Angels hangaround Johnny Larson and a Bandidos member, were wounded. Bowman's murder has never been solved. On 21 February 1994, the Morbids retaliated by attacking the Rebels clubhouse with a Carl Gustaf 8.4 cm recoilless rifle, damaging the premises' garage and swimming pool, but resulting in no injuries. After these incidents, a number of break-ins to the armories for the militias of Sweden and Denmark began. Most men in both Sweden and Denmark undergo obligatory military service and know how to use military weapons. The first major theft of weaponry occurred on the night of 20 February 1994, when the Bandidos break into an armory in rural Sweden to steal 16 shortly-launched anti-tank rockets along with hundreds of hand grenades, pistols, rifles, and crates of ammunition. The Hells Angels leadership in the United States became concerned about the Bandidos' expansion, but also wished to avoid a war and the associated legal repercussions. The Hamp Mother chapter in Oakland summoned Thomas Moller to a meeting where the club's leader Sonny Barger declared that while the Paris Pact marked Sweden as Hells Angels territory, the agreement was one of non-aggression. The Oakland chapter then met with senior Bandidos members in Houston and reaffirmed their claim over the country. Bandidos leaders in the US were unable to control their Provic chapter in Helsingborg, however, as the club's European president Jim Tindon continued to support the Morbids' retaliation against the Hells Angels. A delegation of Bandidos from Texas met with the Hells Angels chapters in Malmö and Copenhagen in an effort to resolve the dispute, but diplomacy proved futile. A series of shootings in Helsingborg followed in the spring of 1994. The war quickly revealed the differences in the strategies of the opposing sides. The Bandidos' attacks were seemingly indiscriminate, whereas the Hells Angels were more strategically aware, targeting their rivals' leadership. In the weeks before Overkill MC in Helsinki became a prospective Hells Angels chapter on 19 February 1994, club member Marco Herzma was beaten at a Hells Angels party in Sweden where he was working as a bartender. The reasons behind the beating are unknown. He resigned from the club and went on to found the Undertaker's MC in Vantar in August 1994. In the spring of 1994, an officer with the Helsingborg Police Department complained. There were shootings almost every day. On 22 June 1994, Juhan Nazianen, president of the Bali MC, a ham support club in Kelikoski, fatally shot Kari Korpi, president of the Clan NC, outside a restaurant in Javanpay. Nazianen was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 9 years in prison on 22 September 1994. While seemingly an isolated incident at the time, Korpi's killing has in retrospect been viewed in relation to the biker war. According to some sources, the clan was a Bandidos affiliate. The Customizers NC and Rabies NC in Oslo became hang-around clubs of the Hells Angels and Bandidos, respectively, in June 1994. A Morbids member was shot in his car in central Helsingborg on 11 November 1994, and a brawl ensued between Bandidos and Hells Angels supporters at a nightclub 2 days later. That same month, a Morbids member killed a fellow inmate at Helsingborg prison for providing information to the police. On 6 and 7 December 1994, car bombs were discovered attached to the vehicles of 2 Rebels members. A shooting involving 2 cars occurred on a road outside Katarp on 8 January 1995 when members of the Rebels and Morbids both arrived at the same time to assist a woman whose vehicle had broken down. The Morbids were awarded Bandidos membership on 28 January 1995. On 5 February 1995, a Rebels member was assaulted by 2 men armed with iron pipes while visiting a restaurant in Helsingborg with his girlfriend. The Undertakers were appointed a hang-around club by the Bandidos on 9 February 1995. On 19 February 1995, a shooting involving members of the Customizers and Rabies took place in Oslo when Customizers fired at Rabies bikers riding in a car, leaving 1 man wounded. Customizers were made a Hells Angels Prospect chapter and Rabies became a Bandidos probationary branch in October 1995. The vice president of the Hells Angels support club Cannonball NC was shot and wounded by an Undertakers member at a restaurant in Helsinki on 1 April 1995. Jim Tindon transferred from the Bandidos Northland chapter in Stenløse, Denmark to the Helsingborg chapter in June 1995. On 17 July 1995, Bandidos Sweden president Michael Joe Ljunggren was shot dead with a submachine gun, likely a Carl Gustaf N/45, while riding his motorcycle on the European Route E4 south of Markaryd in Småland, Sweden, while returning from a meeting with the Undertakers in Helsinki. Ljunggren's murder remains a cold case. The Choppers NC in Stockholm gained prospect status from the Hells Angels shortly after the killing, leading to a theory that the Choppers carried out the assassination of Ljunggren on orders from the Hand. The Bandidos launched 2 attacks against the Hells Angels in retaliation. On 25 July 1995, 2 Undertakers members fired a rocket-propelled grenade stolen from a Swedish Army weapons depot at the Overkill clubhouse in northern Helsinki. The missile penetrated the building's walls but failed to explode on impact. An identical strike was carried out by the Helsingborg Bandidos against the Rebels headquarters in Hastorp on 31 July 1995, again resulting in no injuries. Dan Linge, a Danish police officer who infiltrated the club, carried out surveillance on the compound with a Swedish Bandidos prospect in the days before the attack. The Undertakers were upgraded to a Bandidos prospect chapter 19 August 1995 and moved to a new clubhouse in Kamppi, Helsinki. The same month, Marco Herzma and 2 other Undertakers members assaulted and stole the colors of the former Overkill president. On 27 September 1995, Herzma and another Undertakers biker were attacked by members of Cannonball and Overkill outside a courthouse in Pasila, Helsinki, when they arrived to attend the trial of Kai Tapio Blom and Antti Tormo Tapani, 2 club members charged with the RPG attack on the Overkill headquarters. 4 men with baseball bats destroyed an Overkill-owned tattoo parlor in Punavuori, Helsinki as reprisal on 11 October 1995. Blom and Tapani were convicted in October 1995 and sentenced to 6 years. I hope you like our video. If you like, don't forget to subscribe our channel. Thanks for watching.